Maple Glen Estates presented a facade of suburban tranquility, baked hard under the relentless midsummer sun. The air, thick as wet wool, carried the cloying sweetness of blooming gardenias mixed with the faint chemical tang of chlorine evaporating from countless backyard pools. Lawns, uniformly lush and unervingly green, whispered of diligent fertilization and rigidly enforced watering schedules. This was a neighborhood built on aspiration and maintained by regulation. Every mailbox stood sentinel, identical to its neighbor. Every blade of fescue grass seemed to grow under strict orders. The governing document wasn't just a set of guidelines. It was the Maple Glen Homeowners Association Covenant, a tome thicker than ancient scripture and interpreted with the same fervent zeal. Rules were the bedrock, the air, the water of this place. And the high priestess of their interpretation, the unwavering enforcer of their every clause, was Patricia Holloway. Mrs. Holloway, a woman whose posture seemed permanently braced against some unseen infraction, ruled the HOA board with an iron will. Her age hovered somewhere in the mid-50s, though her severely lacquered hair, a helmet against the oppressive humidity, and her preference for colors mirroring the approved exterior paint palette made her seem timelessly disapproving. She moved through the curving streets of Maple Glen not like a resident, but like a warden patrolling the yard. Her knowledge of the HOA bylaws was legendary, matched only by her absolute certainty in her own interpretations. Whispers followed her wake, tales of public rebukes over trash receptacles lingering curbside 61 minutes past the designated pickup window, or bicycles, visible emblems of disorder, left leaning against garage doors. The word Karen, hissed behind cupped hands and across hastily erected privacy fences, had attached itself to her years ago. It was a title earned through relentless scrutiny of others' lives, aggressive interventions disguised as neighborly concern, and a penchant for escalating minor deviations into major confrontations. Property values were her shield, community standards her sword. She found fault lines in the perfect pavement, saw transgressions in the flutter of an unapproved wind chime. Her methods ranged from anonymous, passive-aggressive notes tucked under windshield wipers to direct, finger-pointing accusations during her daily patrols. To live peacefully in Maple Glen was to live invisibly, or at least impeccably. Residents learned the precise rhythm of lawn maintenance, the art of concealing children's play equipment, the necessity of submitting detailed architectural plans for replacing a porch sconce. Existence was a tightrope walk, the primary goal being to avoid attracting the attention of the neighborhood's self-appointed guardian. Into this meticulously curated, tension-laden environment came the Sterling family. David, Sarah, and Sarah's 17-year-old daughter, Nia, arrived with the optimistic belief in quiet streets and good schools that drew many to the estates. David Sterling was a man of quiet precision, an electrical engineer whose calm surface concealed a demanding profession. Few in the neighborhood knew his full title, chairman of the National Electrical Safety Board. The NESB was the nation's foremost authority on preventing electrical tragedies, investigating their causes, and setting the standards meant to keep people safe. Daily, David confronted the devastating outcomes of shortcuts, code violations, and unqualified hands attempting complex electrical work. Sarah, his wife, offered a warm counterpoint. A therapist by profession, her empathy and understanding nature were the balm to David's world of technical absolutes. Their daughter, Nia, stood on the cusp of adulthood, a bright, artistic soul navigating her final year of high school. Nia carried her own unique way of interfacing with the world. Meningitis in early childhood had stolen her hearing, leaving her profoundly deaf. Her world of communication was a tapestry woven from lip reading, expressive American Sign Language, and the marvel of modern technology, a cochlear implant. This small, sophisticated device, with its external processor nestled discreetly behind her ear, transformed sound waves into electrical impulses sent directly to her auditory nerve. It was her lifeline to the hearing world, allowing her the nuances of speech, the joy of music, and a crucial layer of environmental awareness. The Sterlings, like so many before them, were aware of the HOA's existence but hadn't grasped its potential for weaponization in the hands of someone like Maple Glen's presiding enforcer. Their arrival registered on her internal radar immediately. David's job title meant little to her, but Nia was different. The young woman, sometimes communicating with her mother in graceful, silent gestures, her implant occasionally visible when she tucked her dark hair back, represented a departure from the carefully enforced homogeneity of the estates. This difference seemed to prickle at Mrs. Holloway, lodging itself like a splinter under her skin. The friction started small, almost predictably. A formal notice appeared in the Sterling's approved model mailbox regarding the slow decomposition rate of their moving boxes awaiting recycling pickup. It cited Section 7, Paragraph 4B of the Covenant. Then came a more personal complaint, delivered verbally during one of Mrs. Holloway's tours. The vibrations, she'd stated, lips thin, addressing Sarah while pointedly not looking at Nia, who was sketching on the front steps. Your daughter's music. I can feel it through the walls. David, consulted later, found this claim dubious. Nia listened to music through her implant, often through earbuds connected to the processor. While she perceived sound differently, the actual volume was typically moderate. The physics of sound transmission between their well-constructed houses made the vibration claim highly improbable. He suspected it was less about acoustics and more about perceived disruption. Nia, like countless teenagers seeking efficiency, occasionally traversed the edge of the communal lawn bordering their property on her walk home from the school bus. It was a shortcut of perhaps 20 feet, a common sight in suburbia. But in Maple Glen, under the watchful eye of its chief enforcer, this became a significant infraction. Mrs. Holloway seemed especially protective of this particular stretch of green and a nearby decorative garden bed maintained, sometimes personally, residents noted, by the HOA. One sun-drenched afternoon, the inevitable confrontation occurred. Mrs. Holloway positioned herself directly in Nia's path as the girl approached home. Young lady. The voice was sharp, commanding attention. Nia, startled, instinctively touched the processor behind her ear, her focus shifting to decipher the rapid movement of the woman's lips. This is HOA common property, the woman declared, gesturing emphatically at the grass. It requires significant watering and care. Stay off. Use the designated walkways. It's clearly marked in the community guidelines. Nia, caught off guard and slightly intimidated, offered a quick, signed apology to her mother later that evening. Sarah relayed it politely to Mrs. Holloway the next day, hoping to smooth things over. But apologies were not currency the HOA president traded in. She demanded adherence, swift and absolute. A new focus sharpened in Mrs. Holloway's gaze. She began to track Nia's afternoon routine. She noted the time the bus usually arrived, the path Nia took, her occasional habit of pausing at the edge of that specific common lawn, sketchbook in hand, to capture a flower or the play of light. This fixation on Nia's minor trespass dovetailed neatly with another of Mrs. Holloway's long-held grievances, water usage. Maple Glen operated under strict irrigation schedules, a necessity in the summer heat, but also a point of control. For months, she had dominated HOA meetings with pronouncements on water conservation, railing against inefficient sprinkler heads and perceived wastefulness by residents. She often hinted darkly that stronger deterrents were needed to keep people, especially teenagers, off the carefully irrigated areas during and immediately after watering cycles. Respect for resources, she called it. Adding another layer to the brewing situation was Mrs. Holloway's pronounced pride in her own handiness. She frequently boasted of her DIY prowess, tackling home repairs that others prudently left to professionals. Plumbing, minor electrical work, landscaping adjustments. She considered herself competent in all. Neighbors had occasionally seen her kneeling by the communal sprinkler system control boxes, particularly the one near the garden bed Nia sometimes visited. She'd be there with a screwdriver or pliers, muttering about optimizing flow or adjusting timers for maximum efficiency. No one gave it much thought, assuming she was merely tweaking the watering schedule or fiddling with nozzle pressure. No one imagined her adjustments might venture beyond the realm of plumbing and into territory far more dangerous. No one suspected the dark confluence of her vendetta against Nia, her obsession with water conservation, and her misplaced confidence in her own technical skills was curdling into a truly malicious idea. The quiet hum of the sprinklers held a secret only she knew, a plan taking root in the fertile ground of her resentment. The late afternoon air hung heavy and still, thick with the promise of a coming thunderstorm that refused to break. Heat radiated off the asphalt driveways of Maple Glen Estates, shimmering in waves. Nia Sterling stepped off the school bus, the familiar blast of cool air conditioning replaced by the oppressive outdoor humidity. She waved goodbye to a friend, adjusting the earbuds connected to her cochlear implant processor. Music flowed into her perception, a buffer against the day's lingering stress. Her steps traced the familiar route home. As she neared her house, her eyes caught the almost incandescent green of the common lawn bordering their property. It was damp, glistening from a recent, unscheduled sprinkle. Odd, she thought vaguely. The watering schedule was usually mornings or late evenings. Drawn by the vibrant color and the cool look of the grass, she deviated slightly from the paved path. She decided to pause for just a few minutes, finding her usual spot near the edge of the decorative garden bed. The damp grass felt cool against her legs as she sat, pulling her sketchbook and pencil from her backpack. She wanted to capture the intense purple of the petunias before the light faded. Behind the pristine white sheer curtains of a neighboring house, Patricia Holloway watched. Her breath hitched. There she was, the Sterling girl, sitting exactly where she shouldn't be, on the sensitive area, the recently watered ground near the modified sprinkler head. A grim, tight smile touched Mrs. Holloway's lips. A surge of vindication, cold and sharp, coursed through her. This would teach her. This would enforce the rules. Respect for property. Respect for resources. Her hand, trembling slightly not from fear but from anticipation, closed around the small remote trigger she had carefully assembled. It rested on her windowsill, aimed towards the common area. With a decisive click, she pressed the button. Outside, the sprinklers in that specific section sputtered erratically. Not the usual gentle spray, but a forceful, uneven burst of water shot outwards. But something else happened in the same instant, something horrifyingly wrong. A brilliant, unnatural blue arc of light flashed between one of the metal sprinkler heads and the saturated ground directly beside Nia. The air itself seemed to crackle, ionized by a sudden, massive release of energy. Crack pop zzzt. For Nia, the world exploded. It wasn't sound as she usually perceived it through her implant, filtering and translating. This was a raw, overwhelming wave of electrical noise, a deafening digital scream flooding her auditory nerve directly. It was agony, sharp and blinding, coupled with a violent physical jolt that felt like being struck by lightning. Her muscles seized uncontrollably. A choked cry ripped from her throat as her body convulsed, thrown backward onto the wet grass. Then, absolute silence. Utter, profound, terrifying silence crashed down as the overloaded cochlear implant processor went dead. The external device, subjected to an electrical surge far beyond its tolerance, emitted a faint spark and a wisp of acrid smoke near her ear. Darkness pressed in, not just auditory, but a deeper, disorienting void. Her last conscious sensation was the damp earth against her cheek and the erratic, pulsing spray of water. Inside the Sterling home, David heard the strangled cry cut short. A primal alarm bell clanged in his mind. He glanced through the living room window, his heart instantly seizing in his chest. Nia, on the lawn, convulsing amidst wildly spraying sprinklers. Nia. The name tore from his throat. Panic, cold and visceral, threatened to engulf him. He bolted for the door, Sarah right behind him, her face a mask of terror as she saw her daughter. As David sprinted across his own lawn towards Nia, years of ingrained electrical safety training slammed into place, a bulwark against the overwhelming tide of parental fear. His engineer's mind processed the scene with horrifying speed. The malfunctioning sprinklers, the ground far wetter than it should be, the faint but unmistakable scorch marks near the base of one metal sprinkler head, the lingering smell of ozone. The signs were terrifyingly clear. Uncontrolled electrical discharge. High energy. Sarah, stay back. He roared, his voice strained but commanding. Don't touch her. Don't go near the water. Possible electrocution. He pivoted, racing back towards his garage, his movements fueled by adrenaline but guided by protocol. He knew what he needed. Heavy rubber lineman's gloves rated for high-voltage work. A long, insulated fiberglass pole, standard emergency equipment for dealing with downed power lines, a tool of his hazardous trade. Seconds later, equipped, he ran back to the scene. Sarah was on her phone, her voice trembling as she relayed Nia's condition and David's urgent warning about electricity to the 911 operator. Carefully, expertly, David used the insulated pole. He hooked it gently under Nia's arm, his own feet planted firmly on the drier pavement of the walkway. He dragged her limp body several feet away from the immediate vicinity of the lethal sprinkler head, away from the spreading pool of energized water, onto a patch of relatively dry grass. His movements were precise, economical, despite the frantic pounding in his ears. Nia was unconscious, her breathing shallow and erratic. Her face was pale, lips tinged blue. The external part of her implant was visibly damaged, dark against her skin. The sprinklers continued their chaotic dance nearby. The trap remained active. The piercing wail of the ambulance siren sliced through the humid evening air, fading as it carried Nia towards the emergency room. Sarah had gone with her, her face a canvas of tear-streaked panic and desperate hope, clutching Nia's hand. David remained behind, standing near the edge of the hastily erected yellow police tape that now cordoned off the section of common lawn. The idyllic suburban scene had transformed into a potential crime scene, bathed in the flashing red and blue lights of patrol cars. His mind was a maelstrom. Fear for Nia warred with cold, analytical fury. He had already given a terse, urgent statement to the first responding officers, his voice tight with controlled intensity. He hadn't just reported an accident. He had stated his professional assessment, deliberate electrical modification, high probability of extreme danger, the scene likely still hazardous. He emphasized the impossibility of standard low-voltage sprinkler systems causing such violent convulsions and visible arcing. This was something else entirely. Something intentional. His position, chairman of the National Electrical Safety Board, carried weight. It wasn't a title he invoked lightly, especially not in a personal crisis, but now it was crucial. This wasn't just a local police matter. It potentially involved a complex, deliberately concealed electrical hazard of the exact type his organization investigated nationwide. He pulled out his phone, bypassing the main NESB switchboard number. He dialed the direct line of Frank Carmichael, the NESB's chief investigator for field operations. Frank was a legend in the field, a grizzled, brilliant forensic electrical engineer who had dissected the causes of some of the country's most complex and tragic electrical incidents. "Frank," David said, his voice low, steady despite the tremor running beneath it. "It's David Sterling." A pause on the other end. "David? What's wrong? You sound—" "I have a situation, Frank. Personal. Urgent." David took a steadying breath. "My stepdaughter, Nia. She's been electrocuted. Here, at my home. Maple Glen Estates." "Electrocuted? How?" Frank's voice sharpened, professional concern replacing surprise. Looks like someone weaponized the irrigation system," David said, the words tasting like bile. "Deliberately modified. High-energy discharge involved. Visible arcing. Scene is secured by local PD, but it's potentially still energized. I saw the signs, Frank. Disturbed earth near the sprinkler heads. Non-standard operation." He paused, his gaze drifting involuntarily towards the darkened windows of Mrs. Holloway's house nearby. "I need a top-tier forensic team. Fast. Discreet as possible, but thorough. Full analysis. Voltage readings, wiring trace, point of origin, everything. Frank, this wasn't an accident. I'm almost certain it was intentional." The implications hung heavy in the silence. The chairman of the NESB reporting a deliberate electrocution attempt on his own family member, on his doorstep. Frank didn't waste time with platitudes. "My God, David. Nia, is she?" "On her way to the hospital. Critical, but stabilized for now," David managed. "Just get your people here, Frank. The best you have. We need to know exactly what happened. And who did it." "Consider it done," Frank replied, his voice grim but resolute. "I'm mobilizing now. ETA as soon as humanly possible. We'll find out what this is. Stay safe, David. Don't go near that area yourself, chairman or not." "I know the protocols, Frank," David said quietly. "Just hurry." He ended the call, the phone feeling heavy in his hand. While waiting, he began his own documentation, using his phone's camera, meticulously capturing images from behind the police tape. He zoomed in on the scorch marks near the sprinkler, the unnaturally disturbed soil, the pattern of the water spray, the nearby HOA utility control box mounted on a small post. Every detail might matter. He observed the Holloway residence. Lights burned within, but the curtains remained tightly drawn. No sign of movement. A chilling certainty solidified in his gut, the cold logic of his profession pointing towards the neighborhood's most zealous rule enforcer, the woman who had openly expressed animosity towards Nia, the woman known for her DIY meddling. Could mere obsession curdle into such dangerous malice? Neighbors had begun to gather at a safe distance, their faces pale in the flashing emergency lights. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Shock, fear, disbelief. The carefully maintained piece of Maple Glen Estates lay shattered, exposing something ugly beneath the manicured surface. David felt their eyes on him, felt the weight of their fear and confusion. But his focus remained laser-sharp on the cordoned-off patch of grass where his stepdaughter had nearly lost her life. The investigation had begun. Frank Carmichael arrived less than 90 minutes later, not alone, but with two of the nest's most seasoned forensic electrical specialists. Their unmarked van was equipped like a mobile laboratory, packed with instruments designed to safely analyze and document electrical hazards. They conferred briefly with the senior police detective on scene, Detective Miller, a sharp-eyed man who listened intently as David quickly reiterated his assessment and Frank outlined the NESB team's capabilities and jurisdictional role in investigating significant electrical incidents. Mr. Sterling's assessment aligns with the physical indicators, Miller stated grimly. Standard sprinkler systems don't arc like witnesses described, and they certainly don't put a girl in intensive care. We appreciate the NESB's expertise here. The scene is yours for analysis. Just keep us looped in. Under the glare of portable floodlights brought by the fire department, Frank's team began their methodical work. David watched, forcing himself to maintain a professional distance, though every beep and readout from their equipment sent a jolt of anxiety through him. Initial sweep shows strong voltage fields near these two heads, one technician called out, using a non-contact voltage detector that shrieked loudly as he brought it near the implicated sprinklers, even with the system supposedly deactivated at the main control box. Definitely not low voltage. All right, Frank directed, pulling on thick insulating gloves. Let's carefully expose the wiring around this head. Slowly, bag everything. Using insulated hand tools, the team gently excavated the soil near the sprinkler where Nia had fallen. The disturbed earth David had noticed earlier quickly yielded its secret. Just beneath the sod lay standard indoor-use electrical wiring, completely unsuitable for direct burial, its insulation already nicked in places. It was crudely spliced with electrical tape, not waterproof connectors, to a heavier gauge wire leading away from the sprinkler body. Household Romex, Frank, the tech reported, pointing with an insulated probe. Looks like 12 gauge. Tapped right into something nearby. This isn't sprinkler wire. Trace it, Frank ordered. They followed the buried wire meticulously, using ground-penetrating scanners and careful digging. It led away from the sprinkler, across the common area, towards a junction box for the landscape lighting circuit near the decorative garden bed. David felt a cold dread solidify. Landscape lighting should be low voltage, typically 12 or 24 volts AC, safe. But he also knew that improper, non-compliant installations sometimes occurred, dangerously tapping into higher power sources. Check the source circuit, Frank instructed the second technician, who headed towards the small HOA utility shed tucked away behind some bushes, where the main sprinkler controls and some landscape lighting transformers were housed. Detective Miller accompanied him. Meanwhile, Frank used specialized, insulated probes to carefully pierce the insulation of the exposed wires near the sprinkler head. He connected a calibrated voltmeter, his expression grim as he read the display. He turned to David, holding up the meter. See for yourself, David. The reading glowed starkly in the dim light. 241 volts AC. 240, Frank said, his voice low and harsh. Wired directly to the metal sprinkler bodies. No ground fault protection, no proper grounding path, buried improperly. Whoever did this created an electrocution hazard of the highest order. Combined with the water? It's purely lethal. David swallowed hard, the number confirming his worst fears. This wasn't negligence. This was a death trap. Just then, the technician and Detective Miller returned from the utility shed, their faces grim. Frank, you need to see this, the technician said. The landscape lighting circuit these wires are tapped into isn't a low-voltage system. Someone rigged it years ago, probably for brighter lights, pulling directly from a 240-volt breaker. And worse, Detective Miller interrupted, holding up evidence bags. The breaker for that circuit in the HOA panel inside the shed was deliberately bypassed, jumpered, to ensure it wouldn't trip, even under overload. And we found these near the panel and outside near the sprinkler control box. He held up a bag containing several clear photos of distinct footprints in the soft mud near both locations. Partial prints, but clear tread pattern. Looks like a woman's sensible walking shoe. David's blood ran cold. He knew that tread pattern. He'd seen it countless times on the feet of Patricia Holloway as she patrolled the neighborhood. The NESB team continued their documentation, photographing the wiring, the illegal splices, the bypassed breaker, bagging samples of the wire and soil, taking precise measurements, using a thermal imager to document residual heat signatures from the electrical arcing. A call came through from one of the officers stationed at the hospital. Nia was stable but remained in critical condition. Doctors confirmed severe electrical burns, cardiac irregularities requiring monitoring in the ICU, and significant neurological impact. Her cochlear implant, they reported, was completely destroyed, the internal components likely damaged as well. Full assessment would take time, and recovery would be long and arduous. Revision surgery was almost certain. Relief that she was alive warred with a burning rage within David. He looked at Frank, then at Detective Miller. "The woman who lives in that house," David said, his voice dangerously quiet, pointing towards the Holloway residence. "Patricia Holloway. She's the head of the HOA. She has access to that shed. She's had conflicts with my stepdaughter, specifically about walking on that patch of lawn. She fancies herself a handy person." Miller nodded slowly. "We've been getting background from neighbors. Seems Mrs. Holloway is unpopular, obsessed with rules. Your suspicion aligns with motive and opportunity." He looked at the evidence Frank's team was meticulously collecting. And now, it seems, with physical evidence. Based on the NESB's findings, the confirmed lethal voltage, the deliberate bypassing of safety measures, the illegal wiring traced directly to the sprinkler, the footprints, Detective Miller contacted a judge and secured an emergency search warrant for Patricia Holloway's home. 2 patrol cars pulled quietly up to her house. Miller, Frank, and David, as a concerned family member and witness, not in his NESB capacity now, approached the front door. When Miller knocked, Mrs. Holloway opened it, her face initially composed, annoyed. "Detective, what is the meaning of this intrusion?" she demanded, drawing herself up. "I am the president of this homeowners association, and I—" "Mrs. Holloway," Miller interrupted calmly but firmly. "We have a warrant to search your premises in relation to the incident involving Nia Sterling." He held up the document. "We have discovered evidence of a deliberately constructed, illegal, and hazardous electrical installation on HOA common property, connected to the sprinkler system, which caused severe injury to Miss Sterling. We have reason to believe evidence related to this installation may be found here." Color drained from the woman's face. Her composure started to crack. That's preposterous. An accident. A faulty sprinkler. I had nothing." "Ma'am, we found the wiring," Miller stated flatly. "We measured the voltage. We found footprints matching your shoe type at the utility shed where the circuit was dangerously modified, and near the sprinkler control box. We need to come inside." The search was methodical and swift. In her garage, they found a partial roll of the same type of Romex wire used in the illegal installation. They found wire strippers and rolls of electrical tape matching the type used in the crude splices. The most damning evidence came from her study. On a notepad on her desk lay a crudely drawn but unmistakable diagram showing how to tap into the landscape lighting circuit and connect it to sprinkler heads. Her computer, left open, revealed recent internet search history, how to deter trespassers with electric shock, non-lethal electric fence voltage for garden, remote control wiring for outdoor circuits. Chillingly, it showed a fundamental, fatal misunderstanding of electrical potential, mixing concepts of low-power deterrence with high-power household circuits. On a nearby table lay the remote trigger device. Faced with the physical evidence, the diagram, and the search history, Patricia Holloway seemed to shrink, the haughty indignation evaporating, replaced by wide-eyed panic. "Patricia Holloway," Detective Miller said formally, "you are under arrest for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, felony child endangerment, and multiple counts of reckless endangerment and performing unlicensed electrical work creating a substantial hazard." As 2 officers handcuffed her and led her out of her immaculate beige house, past the stunned faces of neighbors drawn by the commotion, her carefully constructed world shattered. The mask was gone, revealing only raw fear and disbelief. The reign of Maple Glen's HOA queen had ended, not with a citation, but with flashing police lights and the clang of handcuffs. David watched them lead her away, a grim satisfaction mixing with the profound ache of Nia's suffering. The truth was out. Now, justice had to follow. The legal gears ground into motion against the woman who had terrorized Maple Glen Estates. The case built by Detective Miller, heavily fortified by the meticulous forensic evidence gathered by Frank Carmichael's NESB team, was airtight. The physical wiring, the voltage measurements confirming a lethal charge, the deliberately bypassed safety breaker, the incriminating tools and diagram discovered in her home, the damning internet search history, and the recovered remote trigger formed an undeniable chain of evidence. Added to this were the now emboldened testimonies from neighbors, painting a vivid picture of Mrs. Holloway's escalating obsession, her specific animosity towards Nia, and her history of authoritarian control. Her defense attorney mounted a predictable, albeit weak, argument. They attempted to frame the incident as a catastrophic error in judgment, a misguided DIY project intended merely to startle trespassers, not to cause serious harm. They portrayed the former HOA president as an overzealous but technically incompetent homeowner, fundamentally ignorant of the true dangers of the electrical modifications she had undertaken. A fool, not a monster, was the essence of their plea. The prosecution, however, systematically dismantled this narrative. They called David Sterling to the stand. Speaking carefully, distinguishing his role as the victim's stepfather from his professional capacity, David provided expert context on basic electrical safety principles. He explained, in clear, layman's terms, why introducing 240 volts into a wet, grounded environment via metal sprinkler heads constitutes an inherently deadly hazard, not a startling deterrent. Frank Carmichael followed, presenting the detailed NESB forensic findings. He walked the jury through the deliberate nature of the wiring modifications, the bypassing of the circuit breaker, an act, he stated, that demonstrates a conscious decision to override safety mechanisms, and the lethal potential of the setup. He emphasized that even a rudimentary understanding of household electricity should have signaled extreme danger. The prosecution highlighted Nia's specific vulnerability due to her cochlear implant and presented medical testimony detailing the severe, life-altering injuries she sustained, the cardiac trauma, the neurological damage, the permanent destruction of her implant. The internet searches for electric shock deterrents, combined with the targeting of the specific area Nia frequented, powerfully countered the defense's claim of harmless intent. It pointed towards premeditation, a conscious decision to inflict pain, born from malice and executed with criminal negligence regarding the potential consequences. Facing the overwhelming evidence and the very real possibility of an attempted homicide conviction carrying a decades-long sentence, the accused woman accepted a plea agreement offered by the district attorney's office. She pleaded guilty to multiple felony counts, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, acknowledging the weaponized electrical system, felony child endangerment resulting in serious injury, and numerous violations related to performing unlicensed, hazardous electrical work that created a public danger. While the attempted homicide charge was withdrawn as part of the bargain, the severity of the admitted crimes ensured a substantial penalty. At the sentencing hearing, the judge expressed palpable anger and disgust after reviewing the case details. The deliberate targeting of a child, the gross negligence, the calculated risk taken with human life over perceived infractions of law and etiquette. It all painted a picture of profound moral failure. The judge imposed a sentence of 15 years in state prison, stipulating that Mrs. Holloway would serve a mandatory minimum of 12 years before becoming eligible for parole consideration. The criminal verdict was only part of the reckoning. The Sterling family pursued a civil lawsuit against the incarcerated woman, seeking damages for Nia's extensive medical bills, past and future, her pain and suffering, the permanent technological dependence resulting from the implant's destruction, and the profound psychological trauma inflicted upon her. The civil court, finding liability easily established by the criminal conviction and the presented evidence, awarded the Sterlings a substantial multi-million-dollar judgment. To satisfy this judgment, Patricia Holloway's assets were liquidated. The house in Maple Glen, once her fortress of control, was sold at auction. Her savings accounts, retirement funds, and investments were seized. The vast majority of the proceeds were placed into a trust fund dedicated solely to Nia's lifelong care, ensuring she would have access to the best medical treatment, replacement implant technology, therapies, and adaptive resources she might ever need. The woman who had valued property values above all else was left financially destitute, incarcerated, her name synonymous not with order, but with devastating harm. The incident sent shockwaves through the Maple Glen Homeowners Association. While the HOA as an entity was not deemed criminally responsible, the case laid bare critical failures in oversight. The ease with which one board member could access and dangerously modify communal utilities, combined with the culture of fear that had allowed her behavior to go unchecked for so long, demanded change. Facing potential civil liabilities and immense pressure from residents horrified by what had happened, the existing HOA board resigned en masse. A new board, composed of residents committed to transparency and responsible governance, was elected. They immediately implemented stringent new protocols for accessing utility sheds and control boxes, requiring multiple authorizations and professional oversight for any modifications. They terminated their self-managed approach, hiring a reputable third-party property management company to handle rule enforcement, finances, and maintenance professionally and impartially. The focus shifted from punitive enforcement of trivial rules to fostering genuine community safety and well-being. Maple Glen Estates began the slow, painful process of healing and rebuilding trust. Nia's recovery was a testament to her quiet strength. The physical injuries healed gradually. Replacing the destroyed cochlear implant required complex revision surgery, followed by months of auditory therapy to adapt to the new device. The psychological scars ran deeper. The trauma of the attack, the sudden plunge into silence, the fear associated with the place where it happened, these required intensive therapy and the unwavering support of David and Sarah. Yet, Nia endured. Fitted with her new, more advanced implant, she slowly reclaimed her connection to the world of sound. She finished high school, though her final year was irrevocably altered. Inspired by her own journey and the therapists who helped her, she chose to study art therapy in college, hoping to use creativity as a tool to help others navigate trauma. She found her voice, occasionally sharing her story, often under condition of anonymity, at safety awareness events, becoming an advocate for electrical safety education and disability awareness. David Sterling returned to his role at the National Electrical Safety Board with a renewed, deeply personal sense of purpose. The horrific incident in Maple Glen, born from a toxic mix of ignorance, arrogance, and malice involving readily accessible electrical components, became a powerful, albeit anonymized, case study. It starkly illustrated how dangerous DIY electrical work could be, especially outdoors and involving power levels beyond simple low-voltage systems. Leveraging the lessons learned, the NESB developed and launched a major national public service announcement campaign the following summer. The PSA used compelling, sobering visuals, a child playing near sprinklers unaware of hidden danger, a close-up of improperly buried wire, a simulated electrical arc. The voiceover was calm, authoritative, yet urgent. Your sprinkler system keeps your lawn green, but unsafe electrical modifications can turn it deadly. Never attempt electrical work unless you are qualified. Always hire a licensed electrician for outdoor wiring. Ensure ground fault circuit interrupters, GFCIs, are installed on all outdoor circuits. Know the risks lurking in your own backyard and common areas. Electricity powers our lives. Electrical safety protects them. A shortcut isn't worth a life. The campaign reached millions, driving home the critical importance of professional installation, proper safety devices, and awareness of hidden electrical hazards. It was a legacy Patricia Holloway never intended, her crime inadvertently sparking a national conversation about safety. Life for the Sterling family found a new rhythm in Maple Glen. They chose to stay, refusing to let the actions of one disturbed individual drive them from their home. They became symbols of resilience within the community. Nia thrived, channeling her artistic talent and her experience into a future dedicated to healing. David continued his vital work at the NESB, advocating for stricter codes and better public education, forever marked by the day his professional expertise became terrifyingly personal. The neighborhood itself slowly transformed. The oppressive atmosphere cultivated by its former HOA president dissipated, replaced by a cautious but growing sense of shared responsibility and mutual respect. The quiet hum of Maple Glen was no longer underscored by fear, But by the sounds of lawnmowers running on schedule, children playing freely, though perhaps now more mindful of sprinkler heads, and the quiet, enduring strength of a family and a community, choosing recovery over resentment. Far away, in a sterile prison cell, Patricia Holloway served her sentence, a forgotten relic whose quest for absolute control had resulted only in destruction, loss, and a powerful lesson broadcast nationwide. The silence Nia had endured was slowly being filled, not just with sound, but with hope.